Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my round 3 predictions for the 2024 AFL season. I'm going to be going through every game, giving a bit of a talk about each team, how they performed in the last round, the matchup for this week, and I will be giving my tips with a bit of a margin, and we can go through the ladder at the end. To start with, it is going to be the Thursday night matchup between Brisbane and Collingwood. It's going to be 0-2 from the reigning runner-up, and 0-3 from the reigning premiers. Brisbane are coming off a bye against no one, obviously, and in their last game they lost to Fremantle after being up by about 5 goals in the first quarter, and they really struggled after quarter time. They looked tired, they looked sluggish, and they really weren't able to move the ball with much effect against a really solid Fremantle defensive side. Lockie Neal wasn't playing, and he should be back for this game. But they also won't be with Tom Dodie anymore for the rest of the season, as he has unfortunately partially torn his ACL, the same one that he was recovering from. And they've brought in Jack Payne as a bit of a replacement to hopefully go a bit taller. Um, I think Collingwood, coming off of the loss to St Kilda and making a couple changes, no still side bottom, he has been managed. He's really been dropped, and they're just sort of making an excuse for it. They're going to really, really look to push and really try to sort of quiet the media a little bit and show that they can play to their best as they did last year. And in that case, I am tipping an upset, and I have Collingwood to win by 8 points. I just think that with all the negative talk in the media, they're going to have players performing to their best. They're going to want to prove something, and so I think they're going to win the game. Next game is going to be North Melbourne versus Carlton, and this is the Good Friday game. So it's going to be the first of two games on Friday. And I think it should be a pretty easy Carlton win, obviously coming off the bye, so they'll be rested. Wiedering should be back. I don't think Walsh is, but Motlop should be able to be back as well. And I just think with Kerno and Mackay being in really good form, they've got a couple good forwards who are able to get goals as well, and their midfield being a bit more experienced and a bit more bashful than North Melbourne's. I think they'll be able to get on top. Wiedering should be back to be able to contain Larkey, and Brody Kemp on Zerha will be a really good matchup as well. I think that could be the matchup. If it is, it'll be a great watch. And I just think with Carlton's more experienced midfield, they'll be able to run the game out a bit better. And with that, I am going Carlton by just over 30 points. The second game on the Friday night is Fremantle versus Adelaide. And Fremantle are coming off an excellent win against North Melbourne after being down by about 5 goals early in the game. It's a similar story with their other win against Brisbane, where they go down early, they fix a couple of things, and then they really get going in that second and third term, and they break the game open. Caleb Sarong has continued his excellent form in this 2024 season by gathering 35 touches, being arguably best on ground, although that probably goes to Luke Jackson, who at the moment is probably the best ruckman in terms of form. He had 24 touches. I think he kicked the goal, maybe even two. His work rate around the ground is elite, and he's just really propelled Fremantle when he's by himself in the ruck. Now for Adelaide, they are 0-2, and they are coming off a difficult loss against Geelong, where they had every chance to win the game, but they just butchered the ball going inside 50. Taylor Walker came back, which is good, even though he didn't have a great game. They allowed Tom Stewart to intercept, and if they don't do that, not if they don't do that, but if they don't shut down Luke Ryan and potentially Brennan Cox, although I'm not too sure if he's playing, then it might be the same story because Luke Ryan is an excellent player and is probably in that elite category in terms of medium defenders. So it'll be really important for them to be able to get that matchup right. But I just don't think so. I think Fremantle at home will be a big benefactor, and I just think their midfield is more quick, it's a bit more damaging, and they'll be able to get over the line by about 15 points. The first game on Saturday will be between Essendon and St Kilda at Marvel Stadium, and it's going to be quite interesting because I think these are two teams pushing to prove who they are going to be this year. Essendon are coming off a relatively disappointing loss against Sydney. They were beaten for most of the match and were just able to get it on the scoreboard, so it was a bit closer than what I thought how the teams performed. Sydney were a lot cleaner, and they were able to move the ball a lot quicker than what Essendon were able to. But for Essendon to keep it within 5 goals and to get within, I think, 2 goals halfway through the fourth quarter or whatever it was, is quite impressive up in Sydney. But I think if they were really there this season, they would have been able to get over the line and get that win. And then St Kilda were able to beat Collingwood at the MCG on Thursday night in a really solid performance. They were able to get a lead of 5.5 goals in the last quarter before Collingwood made a bit of a comeback before Higgins' goal. If it was in or out, doesn't really matter. He kicked it and it was a great goal. They were really strong in the midfield. They were very contested. They were bullish. They forced Collingwood to a lot of unforced errors, and they capitalised off them as well, which is really good. And I think this is going to be a really interesting game. There's going to be no key forwards in this game, really, because Peter Wright got a silly 4-week suspension and Max King got his 1-week suspension upheld. So it's going to be interesting to see how the forward lines function. But I think with taking that in mind, St Kilda have a more defensively solid list. They're a more defensively solid team. They understand zones better. They understand how to move off the ball a bit better. And so I just have St Kilda being the more defensively solid team, and that will get them over the line as their midfields are relatively even, I think. So I probably have St Kilda winning this by about 20 points. On the Saturday night is going to be a very interesting game as well. Port Adelaide versus Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval. It's going to be the first of 2 weeks where Melbourne are going to be in Adelaide playing, because next week is going to be Gather Round. Port Adelaide came off a good win against Richmond at the MCG, where they were just able to keep Richmond at bay for most of the game. And when Richmond really made a comeback towards the end of that third, they controlled the fourth all the way through and never let Richmond back in it. I thought Rosie and Butters were really strong in the midfield. Todd Marshall was excellent on Dylan Grimes, and he really controlled the forward line. Charlie Dixon was strong in the first half, sort of quieted down a little bit. And I just think they're going to be really, really strong this year again. And then Melbourne came off of a really good win against the Hawthorn Hawks, where they were just able to control the game. They really stagnated Hawthorn's ball movement, and in the first quarter, that was really prevalent. Hawthorn, I believe, had 53 marks, and I'd say over 50 of them would have been uncontested, where they tried to trip the ball around and pierce their way through Melbourne's defensive zone, and it just didn't work. Anytime they tried to be really aggressive, Melbourne shut it down, forced the turnover, and capitalised on the other end. And after the first quarter, it was really just Melbourne and Melbourne only. They were more aggressive in the middle. They really suffocated, I thought, Hawthorn's midfield, and they didn't allow anything free. It's going to be a bit of a cause for concern with May and Lever. May's not going to be able to play this week, and Lever's still touch and go. So it's going to be very interesting. And they've also got Clayton Oliver out for 1 week with what is appearing to be a hand injury. So they're losing a couple soldiers at the moment, Melbourne, and also with their off-field issue, which I might be making a video about, it's going to be a bit of a turmoil for them to get through. And I just think with that, Port Adelaide will be able to get over the line in what will probably be a really good game by about 12 points. We now have Western Bulldogs versus West Coast, and this should be a pretty straightforward game with all things going to plan, where the Bulldogs should get over the line. They had a really good win against Gold Coast over the weekend in Ballarat, where after the first quarter, when they had the wind and kicking 9 goals to 2, they were just able to control the game, never allow Gold Coast back into it, stalled their ball movement, stalled their inside contested possessions, with Liberatore going on rail and having a really good battle. And Waitman was able to capitalise with 6 goals on Gold Coast backline. It was a pretty solid performance all around. I thought their coach did pretty well with Beveridge being able to go with the young guns and not working, but it's just how long it will be able to work. And I think with West Coast showing a couple good signs against GWS, a really good team, there's just not enough though. And I think without Oscar Allen, they really don't have any bite left in them. Jamie Cripps is past it. Jack Darling's past it. And I just think with the rest being really young players who are not experienced, who aren't able to run out games fully, it'll be within 4 goals, I'd say, at the end of 3 quarters. and then the Bulldogs blow it to about a 7-goal lead. The next game is Richmond versus Sydney, and that's at the MCG. So Richmond get 2 games against 2 pretty good oppositions in Port Adelaide and Sydney there. They were pretty good for 3 quarters, I thought, Richmond against Port Adelaide. They really controlled the second quarter and were able to get a few goals late in the third with Liam Baker kicking 2 really important ones to cut it down to 7. But I just thought they relied too much on Port Adelaide pressing so high in a field they don't normally play, and they were able to capitalise quite well in transition, but against a team who's not prepared for it. And I think Sydney defensively are very solid. Isaac Heaney's been excellent. Tom Papley's been excellent. And the rest of their forwards have been able to produce enough. And I think it gets by when you've got such good ball users. You've got Blakey being an All-Australian form, Jake Lloyd not being at his best, but still being elite with the ball, Errol Goulden, Chad Warner. It's really, really impressive from Sydney to be able to do this when they don't have such a contested midfield with Mills, Parker, Adams being back yet. And so I think Sydney will be able to move the ball quicker. They'll be able to slow Richmond down on the transition like Port Adelaide weren't able to do. And I think they'll get over the line by just under 5 goals. And then to finish the round off, we have the Easter Monday clash between Hawthorn and Geelong. And I know a lot of people will be thinking Geelong should have this wrapped up, but there's going to be no Dangerfield as he got injured against Adelaide. And I think that might be a bit of a problem. They're going to get Atkins and Bruin back, at least they should. But I just don't think that'll be enough for their leadership to be able to get to the same. It won't be enough game-breaking skills in the middle. They might have to put Jeremy Cameron in there at times, and I just think that messes up their forward line. Graham Miles was in there a little bit against Adelaide and it worked, but against Hawthorn that might not because they're a bit quicker. Jai Newcomb's able to get on the outside. James Warple can be very quick and very bursting out of stoppages at times. And I just think that Hawthorn need to get on the board if they want to tend to be in around that 8-win mark. And I think Geelong could be a really good game for them to do that. They should be able to rise up on this occasion. It is Easter Monday. We know these two teams have a big history. If they want to win the game, I think they need to get their forwards more involved. Just get them as much ball as possible. It's not a bad forward line. You've got Mitch Lewis, who's a really good player. Ginnivan can do anything when the ball's at his feet. Nick Watson can be extremely dangerous. Luke Bruce, we know how good he is. Jack Gunston, there's names there, and they just need to get them enough ball to the point where they can produce. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how they defend with no real key defenders outside of Sam Frost against Hawkins and Cameron. It'll be really interesting to see the matchups, whether Sicily goes to Cameron, allows him to roll up to stoppages, and then see how damaging he can be. It'll be a really interesting coaching battle between these two. But I think I have Hawthorn barely winning it in another classic game between these two. I just think without Dangerfield, they will be able to contend in the final few minutes, winning the ball around the stoppage. And so I have Hawthorn winning by 10 points. The ladder to finish the round, Sydney on top with 4 games, GWS, Port and Fremantle, the rest of the top 4, and then the bottom 4 of West Coast, North, Richmond and Adelaide. And then you've also got Brisbane, who still haven't won. There are a couple of outsets that I've put in this round, being Collingwood and Hawthorn. I just think you need a couple teams to do it every round, and those are the 2 teams that I've predicted. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It really help push the video in the YouTube algorithm. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button on this channel. There'll be a lot more content on its way. Leave your thoughts in the comments below on who you think might win, and thanks for watching.